veal stew with onion and squash. We're cooking, we're frugal, we're using common sense, all of those good things in the kitchen. And if we're frugal, we're looking at the secondary cuts of meat. So this is from the veal shoulder. It's cheaper, but if you cook it in the right way and long enough, it becomes delicious. Fork tender. So what do we have here? There's a lot of connective tissues and a little bit of fat. So pull off whatever you think is too much for you. And, it's layers and layers of muscle. So, you can't really go through it and collect it all. As you cook it, this thing will kind of break down and actually it'll give that gelatinous consistency to your sauce. That finger licking good comes from connective tissues like that, and really cooking it a long time. So I'm looking in here. If I find a tough piece, just cut it off. A little of salt in a pan, in a heavy pan, because this is where you ultimately want to braise it. Throw in some flour just lightly, and let's put it right in. Let's leave the pieces of meat just like that, caramelize them on each side, and then we'll give them a twist. What will make this delicious? We have tomato paste, we have sage leaves, and we have porcini. These are dry porcini that have been reconstituted in hot water. Dry porcini, you take them out like that. So you say, why don't you just throw and drain the whole thing? Well, the porcini sometimes have a little sediment, and it's on the bottom. So I don't want to pour it and then pour the sediment on top of that. I will let it get to the bottom, settle, and then we'll use the liquid as well. But in the meantime, let's chop the porcini. Gonna make a little hot spot. You know how I do that? The meat is getting caramelized, so let me make a little hot spot, and I will add the tomato paste. So while that is caramelizing, what we're going to add is the cipolline, the little onions. These you blanch, and once they're blanched, they just peel very easily on you, just like that. And here we have a whole bunch of them, blanched and peeled right here. So you can see that they're soft, halfway cooked, and we'll add this to the meat when the meat has cooked a while. Let's throw in the chopped porcini, sage leaf cut in quarters. We'll add wine, drinking wine. That's what you want to add. You open it, a little bit for you, a little bit for the pot. The alcohol dissipates. Now we add the porcini soaking water. Be mindful of the sediment on the bottom. So I'm looking, that's it. Because you see the sediment on the bottom, and you don't want to put that. We let that simmer. We had put salt on the meat, and we'll get to the salt adjusting later. And this slowly will simmer about 40 minutes before we put in the cipolline and squash. Add a little bit of stock or some hot water, whatever. As long as it uses up the water to cook, don't make it soupy, always kind of saucy, perking away. And while that is perking away, let's get to the butternut squash. But instead of just throwing them in there and having poached squash, we will give it a little bit of flavor. Season it lightly with salt. You want hot oil because you don't want to cook them here. We'll finish cooking them there, but I want to give them a little crispiness, caramelization on the outside. Let's check the meat. Looks good already. It hasn't even begun cooking yet. They just began to caramelize. We'll put them. Okay. Here we have the cipolline and butternut squash ready to be added to the meat. But the meat needs to cook at least another 30 minutes before we can do that. So I'll clean up, and then we'll come back to add the vegetables. This has been perking away. It's ready for the vegetables, but let me taste Make sure that it's seasoned properly. Just a little bit of salt. And you see how the meat dissolves and the sauce is nice and savory and tasty and complex. And to this now, adding this, all of this will be flavored with the sauce and give flavor. So let's put the cipollini in. So the cipollini have been cooked. We have sauteed the squash. Could you call this a stew? I guess you could, but it's an elegant stew. Squash with cipollini, with porcini, and it's delicious. So we'll let this simmer away for about 10 minutes, and then we'll be ready to serve. That's all it will take for the vegetables to really finish cooking. But you don't want them to fall apart in your dish. You want the vegetables still al dente, and the sauce is just enough to coat them and the meat. So let's let this perk for 10 minutes, and we'll set up the table and we'll eat. Maybe I should taste a little bit first. So a little bit of meat. I just want a small piece to taste and a small piece of the squash. That looks so good. This is serious food, so a nice glass of red wine. See how it breaks? This is the way the meat will be when it's really cooked. A little bit of squash. Getting all ready. So let's taste the meat first. Fresh and crunchy. And the squash. Sweet, but at the same time squashy. So really a great blend. And a nice complex red wine blend. They have a great Reforsco up there, Merlot. So this looks like a good family platter. So as you can see, I'm filling up the sauce. So I want to get a perforated vessel to get the chunks up so that I can pile them up and then that I can put as much sauce as I want. So now I can take a little bit of the juice and the cipollini. Maybe a little bit just for color, just like that. This is a real family hearty meal. Secondary cuts of meat. Less expensive, but yet is as luscious and as delicious as any fat of meat.